decided to stay in the field because I discovered where my purpose and passion is. And not a lot of people get to say that. But most importantly, I see the difference in the individuals that I support on a daily basis and how those individualized support needs. So instead of, inappropriate behaviors as whatever you want to deem them as, I get to see people thriving and being and participating, and for me, that's it. That's the moment.
I'm proud of every piece of work that we do where we're able to bring together community and collaborative work to decide what it is that we need to do, to decide what is most important, particularly what is most important to people with developmental disabilities. I'm probably most proud of the work I do with self-advocates, even though that's not the core of my job. So the self-advocate group we work with in Calgary is a Disability Action Hall. And I think they just do so much, it's amazing, but I think the thing we're most proud of is achieving a low-income transit pass for the whole city, for every low-income person. So there's about 110,000 people in Calgary that benefit from the work that's been done from self-advocates. So that's probably the best.
One of the more interesting projects is that we once had an individual that could not find a place to live. So our agency purchased a small house and we created a rent-to-own agreement. And 10 years later, the person now owns their own house and has no fear of being evicted. And I think that was probably one of the more interesting, novel solutions to a very difficult problem that I've ever come up with.
My first client that I worked with, I worked with him for 3 years, had huge successes in helping him manage his behaviors. And so it had me hooked from there on to see the change that I could make in his life. Most of them have to deal with individuals who have behaviors that I want to say others have mostly given up on and have just decided that this is what is for this person, and so there was constant development of program after program after program to help that individual. When I started working with them, I just did a quick overview, and from my point or my perspective, I felt that what they needed was more respect and more choice in their life, and just to be trusted, for them to trust me and for me to trust them. Once we established those three things, it was straight ahead forward. The individuals that I work with now no longer have any of those behaviors, and it's not because of a program that was in place. It was because of the way I spoke to and assisted them.
I got fired from my first job in the field, which was around this young guy wasn't allowed to go out in the community because there were certain rules that they were kind of following, and so I was coming right out of college and guns blazing around rights and stuff like that, and just was maybe more vocal about it and got fired for it. They said it wasn't too risky to have this guy, so at my 3 months they said go on your way. But so that was proud of getting fired from that one, and I guess in a way what's kept it is colleagues, cool mentors, people that are fun.
I'll tell one story about something I was really proud of, and Vern, who's filming here, was part of this project. A guy named Dennis who grew up in institutions in Moose Jaw, in Valley View, and in Deer Home, in Red Deer, and finally escaped from that life and came to live in Calgary. And he wanted to tell his life story when he was older, and he couldn't read or write. So we thought, well, a cool way for him to tell his story would be to draw, like for him to tell his stories to us and we would draw them. And so we worked on this project for 5 years, maybe, something like that. And by the time we finished, it was a great time together. And by the time we finished, we didn't work 5 years every day all the time, but over this span of 5 years, we had a mural that wrapped around a community hall that was so long, however many feet that is. And then we filmed him narrating the stories, of the drawings that we had done together. and made that into a video that he then went on to kind of sell at conferences and things like that. So it was that was something pretty cool.
Almost every day there are successes and achievements and goals being reached, and they may seem very small from someone else's perspective, but from the person that you're working with, every one of those is a huge victory. And that's part of why it's such rewarding work, is because every day you move towards these goals and you share those successes and the joy of those successes.
Great satisfaction from working with people with disabilities, because when I leave at the end of the day, I feel like I've done something. I feel like that possibly I've made a difference to someone. That it could be anything from, you know, maybe they wanted a driver's license. So I had to work out what was that they wanted. They wanted that little piece of ID with that picture on it, and to him it was the driver's license. And as we worked it way down, it was like, oh, he wanted a piece of ID with his picture on it. And once we got that, he was, look, I'm just like everybody else. And that was the joy that was like, yes, I've done something wonderful.
Working with individuals and seeing either skills that they have lost and been able to redevelop, or some that they've been working on for years, and finding that little niche for them to attain that skill is what I'm really proud of.
I enjoyed every time in the field at every level of my involvement. The 5 years in frontline was just tremendous opportunities to get really close to the individuals receiving services.
I started in this field at 15 years age. I found a advertisement in the newspaper that were looking for camp counselors for camp with special needs was the term back then, and I applied and I fell in love, and I have never left.
I would have to say that I started out in a temporary position, working frontline. I worked residential programs, I worked employment, I worked casual, and then I moved up to a program or team lead position, and then into a coordinator's position, and then now I work in a program director position. And I even worked for a year covering the executive director position. So I guess I feel like I've done just about every job and that there is in our organization. And I think that that's not something that everybody can say they've done.
I got started in the field personally right from childhood because we have family members. And with that, my family never recommended being in the healthcare field, you just watched it. And so from that, the college program was offered at high school year-end grad, you know, what's your future? And I jumped at the opportunity.
I got started in this field by accident. I was looking for a job as a researcher, and there was a place right across the street from the university that I went to called the, at the time, Vocational and Rehabilitation Research Institute. So I applied for a job there and got it. So it was an accident, but a beautiful connection.
I got into the field I started working in the healthcare system in British Columbia, and I moved to Alberta, and there wasn't much job opportunity in the healthcare field, and there was a posting to work with adults with disabilities. And I'll admit I was a little nervous because I had never done it before, but I applied and was hired and have never looked back.
I started out similar as her in the healthcare field, and I just come off my maternity leave, and I was looking for a job that would give me a little bit more flexibility, and that would just kind of be a good fit to my training. So
I went to school one day and I told the lady I don't know what to do with my life. And she suggested that I try the Disability Studies program, and I said, why not? I've never personally known anybody with a disability, so it was a real eye-opener to take the course. Well, after doing the program and actually working in the field, what helped me decide to stay was just the bonds you grow, and just I've always been a very helpful person, and just, I feel like this job is so meaningful, and you know, I help people grow, and it makes me feel good.
Actually, it was my principal in grade 12. There was a young child in grade 1 that needed one-on-one, and there was no funding, and he approached me at doing special projects with the child. From there, straight out of high school, I worked 2 years in Michener. I left the field for a few years and ended up coming back into a special pilot project that social services was doing. And then I left that field, and now I've been back for 10 years.
I got started in the field in the early 70s, 1972, and I'd been taking some social work studies at the Mount Royal College in Calgary, and came into an institution at Michener Services for a job in the summertime, where I stayed in the field going forward. Understood that the field was starting to evolve and change with new concepts, and it was my thinking at the time that might as well stay in this very field, because there's not a better place to do social work than right here.
Come in with a big heart, a little thicker skin sometimes, but it is so diverse. There's too many facets to not nail it down to say that its developmental disabilities field is fine, but it can go all any which way you choose.
I'm going to talk about the education piece. And for me, I'm going to tell everyone, as someone who did it later on, after I stumbled in, do it right out of school. Go, and this, put money aside, put the positioning aside, the value that you can take and apply into your daily work from the formal education side of it. I didn't realize how much my skills had grown in the last 3 years of really pushing through the final stages. I know sometimes we undervalue the education component of what this field needs, but it's huge. Now that I've lived it and walked it and breathed it, do it.
Well, as a researcher, it was a little bit different than a kind of a typical sort of frontline worker coming into the field. But my educational background was in sociology of law, and I was hired to do research around legal issues that affect people with disabilities. So issues around human rights, issues around guardianship and trusteeship. So I have a master's degree in sociology of law. So that was the connection. I also have a bachelor's degree that one of my majors was psychology. So that kind of had a bit of a connection, but kind of a vague connection, yeah.
Well, the School of Hard Knocks first and foremost. I have a degree in anthropology and psychology from the U of A, and I've had multiple training courses and opportunities. I also had the pleasure of spending 12 years in local government, and that actually gave me a lot of background information and support for this field.
On-the-job training, constant on-the-job training, attending every conference, every training session, everything that I could get my hands on, I would just go into. Actually, my very first thing that I did before I was hired and before I even started my job is I went to the library, and I've never been to a library, but I went to the library and I got a book on autism because the young man that I was going to be providing care to had autism. I worked my way up from frontline into management into where now I own the company, so I am tied up 24 hours a day doing something with the business. And so I continue obtaining my education from every source I can possibly find, but no, not an institutional type of a source.
I was very well supported by the agency that I worked for. I trained on the job. I did a correspondence course that took me about a year, finished that, and since then workshops, on-the-job training, really good support and no cost to me whatsoever, which is a beautiful thing.
But what I do come with is with experience. Is education important in this field? Yes. We are looking for people with education. We are looking for people with the experience also. Is one any better than the other? It's hard to say. Would it be wonderful if they both were together and they got experience and got the education also? Yes. In the 12 years that I've worked with my organization, I have taken many, many classes. Everything from the foundations to MAT, the positive behavior supports. We also train inside, and that to me is very important for our staff who come in that don't have that education behind them.
Training that I would recommend for someone starting in the field. There's a lot of, if you're interested, if you check out the Edmonton Autism site, if you check out many of this, like if you Google any of the disabilities, most of them have training listed. So anything you can get. I've taken behavior training, I've taken autism training, I've taken all that kind of stuff. Anything that would be related to the type of person that you're working with. And if there's any disability services in the colleges or anything, something like that would be recommended too.
It's very rewarding. There's lots of challenges, lots of rewards, and you know, there's tough days and great days, but the great days outweigh the tough days. So if you're thinking it's something you can't do, that's not true. Anybody could do this work. You just have to have that belief in people, I guess, and that the people that you support can achieve their goals. And as long as you're working from that perspective, then I think anybody can succeed. Every day you feel, I mean, I come into work and I feel like a superhero because everybody greets you and they're such great people to work with that I don't know what to say. My advice is just, you know, if you're thinking about it, give it a try because it is very rewarding.
What advice could I give someone to starting in this field? Just enjoy your time. Be happy, love your job, love who you work with.
If you have the passion for people, then this is the field for you. And follow through with as much education as you can possibly get. Don't miss any opportunity to learn something new.
My advice to someone who is considering working in the field is to go for it. It's rewarding, fantastic work, and I think it would enrich almost anyone's life who was suited to it. So I guess assess whether you're suited to it and then dive in head first.
If somebody wanted to start a career in this field, my advice would be to, you know, sometimes you just have to go with the flow and just take things as they are. Not be afraid to ask questions. It's always good to ask. And, you know, you will have just as much bad days as good days, but, you know, it's all worth it in the end.
That it would have to be one you really want to work with people, helping them achieve life skills and accomplishments, and being very open, not being squirmish about the hard questions of life.
My advice is that it is a field where you have to really move forward as the individuals themselves are moving forward. It is you take your cues from the people you serve. You know who you're actually working for, primarily the individuals receiving services and their guardians. And the advice I have is totally work with passion in serving the individuals receiving services.